Hey, friends. This is Martine Williams, and I am obsessed with all things mompreneur life and helping you to remix your priorities, your habits, your mindsets, and yes, even your relationships so that you can build a successful business without losing yourself in the process. I'm also obsessed with the color turquoise and lyrics of the 80s and 90s, but that's beside the point. Girlfriend, you don't have to hustle 24/7, 365 and continue to sacrifice your health, your relationships, and your sanity to be a successful mompreneur. As a small town girl living in a lonely world to a six-figure mompreneur, I am here to teach you how. There is a better way, and this podcast is your one-stop shop for all of the how-tos, the encouragement, the life hacks, the success tips, and of course, a little side of tough love. This is the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. So let's do this. Friends, I'm so excited for you to hear this interview with the Turquoise Talk guest. She's an author, a book that I read. It's funny how we can be so connected, or you get to hear about different people from podcasts, the podcast world. So I was actually listening to a podcast that a friend had referred to me to listen to this episode. And then they were interviewing this guest. And then I bought her book. And then I just fell in love with the book, listened to it on audio. And then I purchased the physical book. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to ask her and see if she'd be willing to come on the podcast. And she said yes. So really excited for today's Turquoise Talk guest, Karen Ehman. So a little bit about Karen. She is a New York Times bestselling author, a Proverbs 31 ministry speaker, and a contributing writer for Encouragement for Today, online devotions, and a teacher in the First 5 Bible study app, which has over 2 million daily users. I know many of you probably use that. She has written 18 books and Bible studies, including Keep It Shut, What to Say, How to Say It, and When to Say Nothing at All. And the 2020 ECPA devotional book of the year, Settle My Soul, 100 Quiet Moments to Meet with Jesus. She is a cum laude graduate of Spring Arbor University with a major in social science. Karen has been featured on Today Parenting, redbook.com, foxnews.com, crosswalk.com, uversion.com, and is a monthly columnist for Home Life magazine. Her passion is to help women live their priorities. I share that passion with her as they reflect the gospel to a watching world. She is married to her college sweetheart, Todd, and is the mother of 5 children, 3 biological and 2 in-laws by marriage, although she forgets which ones are which. Karen enjoys collecting vintage Pyrex kitchenware, cheering for the Detroit Tigers, and spending her days feeding the many people who gather around her mid-century dining table to process life and enjoy her county fair blue ribbon winning cooking. So that was a mouthful, but you will just love getting to meet Karen, her vulnerability, her stories that she shares, and this topic of people pleasing, which is what we're going to be talking about, and priorities and boundaries and those kinds of things. You're not alone. If this is something that you're struggling with, or you've been struggling with, and every year you kind of set this intention that you're going to no longer be stuck in this people pleasing prison, I just want you to know, first and foremost, you're not alone. And number 2, you can break free from it. And so I'm super excited for you to hear this interview with Karen. And so get your pen and paper ready, because this is going to be an amazing time for you to just get your cup filled, maybe get a little challenged, and just get to meet an amazing woman. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back, friends, to the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. This is your host, Martine Williams. And y'all, I'm so excited about our guest today. I love bringing on Turquoise Talk guests to kind of share their journeys and just their tips that they have to share with us for mompreneurs. And today, you're going to love this episode. I already know it before we even dive into it. So be sure you have pen and paper ready, and you may want to listen to this on repeat. But thank you so much to my guest today for Karen Ehman coming on to the show. I'm super excited to talk with you. This is the first time her and I are meeting. So I know it's going to be a fruitful conversation. So thank you for your willingness to come on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So for those who, and I don't know really much about you, I was just reading in your book, kind of your bio, 16 books. Is that right? Did I read that right? 18 books. Wow. Okay. Awesome. But for those who don't really know a lot about you, tell us a little about you, your family, and kind of how you became a mompreneur, why you decided to start a business and writing books.
Sure. So I am from Michigan. I live right in the middle of the state. We Michiganders always carry our maps with us. So if this was video, I had to hold up my hand and point to the middle of my palm. Yep. Yep. I've lived here all my life. And I married my college sweetheart. We have 3 children and then 2 children that are bonus children by marriage, although I kind of forget which are which. So I kind of think I'm a mom of 5.
Aww.
And we just had our first grandchild, our middle child, who met his wife through my Instagram account. Kind of a long story, but she had done one of my Bible studies and started following my son. Anyhow, they got married and they gave us our first grandchild, little Jasper. He was born in January, so he's about 10 months old. And I love to write. I love to speak. I've loved doing those things my whole life. It's what my teachers used to comment on me, like, she doesn't shut up. And and people used to say that, boy, can that girl talk, So now I just turned that into a ministry and a business by talking at events and then talking on paper, which is basically what writing is. So I have written 18 books in 20 years. So it's something I love to do. And I love to do it because I can do it in my home. I don't have to go off to an office.
Right. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know, there's always a mess before the success, or there's always kind of the lessons that you learn maybe along the way in writing those 18 books in 20 years. That's incredible. In between, I'm sure you're speaking and you're being a mom and you're being a wife. And so it can get messy, when you're trying to pursue those things. So what's maybe been your biggest lesson that you've learned along the way?
I would say 2 things. First of all, that you're always going to be nervous and second guess yourself. I used to think I'd get to this point where, after I've got a couple books under my belt, I'll just feel so confident and I'll never question like what is the next topic I should write about, or if I'm speaking at a speaking event, I won't get nervous before I walk out there. And that has never been the case. I'm always nervous. I'm always I saw a gift the other day that was for sale. It was a coffee mug that said, "Let me overthink about it." And I thought, boy, is that me? But I think I'm always going to overthink. I'm always going to second guess. I'm always going to be nervous. But I think that's actually a good place to be, because it keeps me dependent on God. It keeps me praying and making sure that I'm going in the right direction and I'm aligning what my actions are with scripture and with what he would have for me. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing, I think it's just a perspective that I learned over the years. And I love to encourage moms coming behind me to adopt it from the beginning and not make the mistake I did and not. So it is to keep the perspective that your family, what happens in your 4 walls, that is your main gig. That is your main ministry. It's not that your business, your ministry, whatever it is, your side hustle is the main thing and you're going to tuck your family in around the edges. That's backwards. Yeah. Keep your family the main thing and God will help you to get the rest done.
Right.
I think that so often I see women that are just starting out and they're just like leaving their families in the dust to try to go make a name for themselves and get followers and get popular and get recognized and be verified and all this. And their family is just going to resent their business, going to resent their ministry. We always tried to make it about our whole family. That it wasn't just mom's gig. It was all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, being a mompreneur for 15 years and leading women, I've seen exactly what you're saying, where they turn around, they've got to whatever their level of success is, and they turn around, there's no one there to enjoy it with, because they're resenting, the success. They're resenting that mom wasn't present. They're resenting, the husband, that she didn't spend time. They see the business as a distraction and as a competition, right? For mom's time or the wife's time. So I love that you shared that. And the first thing you shared, I was smiling so big because I struggle with that, personally as a mompreneur and feeling confident all the time. I'm like you said, I'm going to get there. I'm going to have that 100% level of confidence when ... And, there are moments of confidence, but I think it's because we care. You care about what you do. I care about what I do. And we do want to be in alignment with what God is calling us to do. So it's not a bad thing, but man, some days I wish I just had that that confidence 100% of the time. I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you sharing that, because that's kind of a little bit of the season that I'm in, is working through some of those things. But I absolutely loved your book. I listened to it on audio, and then I bought a physical copy because I wanted it. And then I printed out the little PDF that went with it. And we'll put a link to that in the show notes and the book for everyone, because you're going to want to have a copy of the book, and also the 7 stop it statements, I think is what they're called, for people pleasers. And we're going to get into that in just a minute, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about what the prison people pleasing that you've experienced, and how did you break free from it?
I have been a people pleaser my entire life. I grew up in a broken home with a father who was an alcoholic, who had multiple affairs, and ended up divorcing my mom. And when he was drinking, you did not want to make him mad, because he would get physically violent. I always have to stop at this point in the story and say, the last 25 years of my dad's life, he didn't take a drink. He came back to the Lord. He was a wonderful grandfather. Yeah, he was married to someone else by then, but he and my mom reconciled a few months before my dad died. And so it ended up well. But back in those days, it was, it was scary being around him. And it was sad being around my mom, because her white picket fence dreams had come crashing down around her. All she wanted to do was be a wife and a mom and be super involved in the church and the community and the PTA mom and baking cookies and all of that. And all of a sudden she had to go find a job to support her 2 kids. So I learned very early, don't make dad mad, because he might hit you. Don't make mom sad, because her life's already so sad. And so I kind of just adopted that pattern and felt like it was my responsibility to make everybody happy around me. I carried on into school. I wanted to please my teachers. I wanted to be liked by the kids in the class. And it just got to be this pattern in my life that I constantly felt like I was solely responsible for the happiness of everybody around me. And people pleasing could get me places, and after decades of doing it, it's been about 6 years ago now, 5-6 years ago, it all came crashing down. I had gotten to the point where I was locked in a prison of people pleasing. I didn't know how to get out, but it was starting to affect me, not just emotionally, but physically. I couldn't sleep. I had a twitch in my left eye that wouldn't go away. I was having a lot of manifestations of stress. And there was just one summer where I said yes to something that kind of put me over the edge. And I felt like, I'm going to just crash and burn if I don't stop this. And so it's all laid out in the book, but basically God led me to a season. For me, it was a summer, 3 months, a season of necessary and no. I started to do only what was necessary for my home, my family, and my business, and say no to everything else for 3 months, even if it was something little like baking cookies for the toddler class at church, because I had been saying yes to my whole life, and I needed a break to stop, to just pause. And then at the end of those 3 months, put back on my plate only the things I felt God was calling me to do, not the other things all the things people were expecting me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for being vulnerable to share your story. Just all of that. I think that people will definitely lean in to that. And so I would say that probably is what led to, that was kind of a burnout season for you. Would you not agree with that? I mean, you kind of stopped it before it got too bad, but I mean, you were kind of having those physical signs of burnout. So that's always a question I like to ask every guest, because that's part of my mission, is to help women to burnout proof their life and their business. So what were some specific things with the necessary and the no? That's one thing, but was there anything else you did, like to help fill your cup back up, or to really re-energize, refuel as you're working through this burnout season?
Well, for me, I had to get to the point where I was just honest with myself. I think that's step number one, because for so many of us, we think that we can always take on another thing. Like we underestimate how much time something's going to take, and we overestimate, how much we can handle. And so I had to just be really honest with myself and say, I can't do it all. I can't do it all. I have this thing called limitations, which a lot of times we want to think we don't have limitations. We don't like to talk about that word. We think that it's a bad word, but it's a good word, because our limitations will help us to get, to prevent getting to that point where we have burnout.
Yeah.
And then I had to also be honest with myself and say, of the things I'm doing, what ones do I just feel like the joy is sucked right out of? Because that's for me a really big indication that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, is if there's no joy in it. Now, I don't mean that to say that you only do things that are fun.
Right.
You only say yes to fun things. I mean,
fun.
yeah. And there are some times where, you have to say yes to, staying and cleaning up after the life group at church or whatever. It's not fun, but you feel like, I have the capacity to do this. And, I'm being called to do this, and I'm going to do it with a cheerful heart. I don't mean that, but there are just some things that I just resented so much doing, because I knew the only reason I was doing them was to make somebody else happy, make them like me, make them, think I'm capable or competent. And it was not a good place to be. So I think we need to really evaluate each ask that comes our way. Mm-hmm. And don't ask ourselves, the question we always ask, am I capable? Am I capable of doing this? Don't ask yourself if you're capable. Ask yourself, am I called?
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
We women have the curse of capability. We are capable of doing a whole bunch of things at once, especially women who are kind of those with it business women, go-getter type that can do a lot of things at once. People know that about us. And so they come to us and ask us to solve their problems and to, help with their projects, because they know we're going to get it done. But don't ask yourself, am I capable? Ask, am I called? And again, it's not that you're only going to be called to things that are fun and enjoyable, but when we say yes to something we're not called to do, we're taking away the blessing from the person God meant to do it in the first place, because we're just over here saying yes all the time, and we don't ever give anybody else a chance to serve. So really, take each ask seriously and prayerfully and carefully, before the Lord, and say, is this something I'm supposed to do? Do I have the capacity to do it? Do I have the skill set to do it? Whatever is going to be your grid, but don't just say yes because it's going to make somebody like you more, or make them happy with you, or not upset them. Mm-hmm. I think it's just a case by case thing, and we just have to get out of that habit of just always saying yes because I'm capable. Yeah, we're capable of doing 50 things at once, but that doesn't mean we're supposed to be doing 50 things at once. Yeah.
I love the cursive capability. Is that what you said? I've never heard that before. I love that, because I'm thinking about, they don't teach cursive writing anymore, but I remember in second grade learning it, and and that's a really great, I'm a visual person. So I love that. I'm definitely going to be saying that again. So in your, in the book, you talk about the 7 stop it statements, and one of them in November, I kind of say November, and I really focus on helping women to say no. And one of the things that you said is that you don't owe them an excuse for why you said no, but you will owe God an explanation for why you said yes. And that was like super powerful. And I wonder if you could just kind of maybe go into a little bit more detail on that statement that you put in the book.
Yeah, especially the first half of it, that you don't owe others an excuse for why you said no. I am the queen of over-explaining. Like, I over-explain why I'm saying no to someone. Yeah. And it's almost like my mouth is falling down the stairs, because I start to say, well, I'm really busy, or really, let me just give you an example. Recently, I got asked to potentially endorse somebody's book. It was someone I don't know. I think they said they had met me at a conference, like in the elevator or something, that I didn't personally know them, but they had self-published this book, and they wanted to know if I would read the manuscript and offer an endorsement. I should have just politely said, thank you so much for thinking about me, but I just simply don't have the bandwidth to do this right now, but I'm wishing you well in your endeavors. End of story. Right. Oh no, I had to over-explain, and I had to say, well, it's just a really busy time right now. We just moved our son to Tennessee, and I've got a bunch of other projects due, and, you're sending it digitally, and I like physical copies, and I just don't have the time right now. I couldn't possibly get to it until, 2 months from now. So I'm just going to have to say no. Well, what did they do? They saw all my over-explaining, all my excuses as targets to shoot at, and then take down one by one. They're like, oh, well, we'll get you a physical copy. Oh, well, we'll give you 2 more months. Oh, well, we'll this, we'll that. And they took all of my over-explaining excuses and remedied them. And then I was almost forced to say yes.
Right. Yeah.
So don't over-explain. You don't owe other people a huge, long explanation for why you said no to them. So I like to tell people, announce, don't apologize.
Mm.
Don't sit there and apologize for it. Just announce, I've thought about it. The answer is no, but I wish you well.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. I had a couple of women reach out to me on social as I was talking about saying no and trying to give them some helpful tips, some of the things that you're sharing. They said, okay, I said no, but now I feel really guilty for saying no. Like how I know I needed to say no and I said no, but I still feel guilty saying no. So what would you say, especially, I think for moms for sure, we just kind of carry mom guilt around a lot of times. And a lot of it's misplaced. It's just not warranted, just expectations we put on ourselves. But what would you say? Like, how do you, after you flex the muscle and you've said, you've announced no, how do you not feel guilty about it?
Well, first, I think you need to determine, where is that guilt coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Is it true conviction from God that maybe you should have said yes? Because that does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Or is it coming not just from the person that's asking you, but from other people? I know so often I look around at other people and think, well, they would have said yes, or they think I should have said yes. And we do this thing where we compare ourselves to other people and say, well, so-and-so is doing 6 different things. And I just said no to my 3rd thing because I can only handle 2. And we, sometimes it's called yard sticking. We compare ourselves to other people and their capacity. Well, we need to know our own capacity and know if we're a low, a medium, or a high capacity person, and not let guilt come in because we're comparing ourselves to someone else who can do 6 things at once. And that's how she rolls. She does better, when she's busier. Look and see, really, is it conviction coming from God that you should have said yes? Or is it guilt coming from maybe that person and their demeanor that asked you to do the task or help with the project or whatever it is? Is their demeanor, their words, their, cold shoulder, is that making you feel guilty? Well, that's not good. A true friend, if they ask you to do something and you honestly say you don't have the capacity, will understand. They'll understand. And just really try to sense where it's coming from. Because I think so often the guilt is just, it's coming from the person that asked us, or it's coming from comparing ourselves to other people and thinking, well, they would have been able to do it. Well, you're not them. You're not them.
Right. And I think that's a huge piece that people need to understand is what their own individual capacity is. I do think that's a huge piece of the comparison, because I get asked all the time, how do you do all the things that you do? Well, I have a very high fuel tank, I have a high capacity. I can do lots of things. And then I have friends that don't, it's really easy for me sometimes not fully understanding these different capacities, but like, well, why? They look a little lazy, but they're not. They just don't have the same capacity as me. So I love that you brought that up, because I do think that's a really key point. One of the things you talked about in your book that I loved, and I was putting people to these names, was you talked about the pushers, the pouters, and the guilt bombers, and the other people who try to call the shots. Could you just maybe briefly just share what those different people are? Because I literally could pinpoint, and honestly, even myself, I could see some of the times where I've been one of those people to other people. So can you share? Because I just thought that was really great.
Yeah. When God led me on this journey of necessary and no, and really backing off in my life, not saying yes to everything, I had some time to really evaluate the different people in my life that I really felt compelled to say yes to all the time. And they fell in these 4 categories. I didn't find this anyplace, in a book I read or research. It's just in my own life. I saw that there were 4 types of people. And the first type was the pusher, that kind of dominant personality. Pushers get their way by pushing. They kind of roll in like a steamroller, and they make you feel like you have to do it. And they kind of stomp their foot and get their way. That's the pusher. But the second one, and I have a lot of these in my life, is the pouter. Not powder like powder you put on your face, but Pouter. They pout. They don't get their way by pushing and stomping their foot. They get their way by dropping their smile. And you just don't want to make them sad, because maybe they really already do have a lot of true sadness in their life, and you don't want to add to it. So you tend to say yes to them just to, make sure that you don't make them sad. So that's the pusher, the powder. The guilt bomber, that's the person that gets you to do things because they make you feel guilty. Guilty because you have more time, guilty because you have more money, guilty because you have more skills, whatever it is. They kind of guilt you into doing things. That one's pretty self-explanatory. But the other one that I tended to see a lot, the fourth person was the me first maximizer. And that person is the hardest for me to deal with. They're the kind of person where they change what should happen based on where they're at in the scenario. They always tend to get themselves in the slot that put themselves first. If there's, a bigger piece of pie, they somehow get the bigger piece of pie every single time. And just a little silly example of it is, I had a me first maximizer in my life for the last 30 years. And one time I was talking to her on the phone, and this was back when there were landlines and call waiting. And I saw that my dad was calling on call waiting. So I said to the me first maximizer, hang on a second. I got to tell my dad I'll call him back. And so I switched over, said, hey, Dad, I'm on the other line with so-and-so. I'll call you back. And then I came back on the phone, and boy, did I get it. She was like, I can't believe how rude to put me on hold to tell somebody that you'll call. Why don't you just ignore the call and call him back later? How rude. That is so rude. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Wow. Well, I am not kidding. No less than 2 weeks later, I was on the phone with someone else, and the me first maximizer tried calling in. So what did I do? I ignored the call, right? Because I was just told it's rude to put someone in. So I ignored the call. I finished it up. It took me 20, 30 minutes on that call. And then I called back the me first maximizer, and I said, oh, I see that you dialed in when I was on the phone. And she said, well, yes, I dialed in when you were on the phone. Why did you not switch over and tell me that you were on the phone and it was going to take a half hour? That is so rude to not let me know what's going on. And I'm like, wait a minute. 2 weeks ago, when you were in one spot in the scenario, things should have gone down according to plan A. But now that you're in a different spot, it's according to plan B. And me first maximizers do this. They can always arrange things so that they get first place. I'm not saying this is an all-out narcissist. They're not that bad. They're just very clever, and they can always somehow come out on top.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, and these kids today aren't going to ever understand what it was like to have call waiting or the busy signal,
Yes.
Oh my goodness. The patience that it taught us to have the busy signal and the dial-up internet. So funny. Yep. So funny. So when you're dealing with these people, like when you realize this in your life, that these were the people that were, part of your people-pleasing prison, did you communicate to them like you were no longer going to accept that behavior? Did you just kind of naturally pull away from them? Because I know someone's listening. They're like, yep, I got the powder. Yep, I have the guilt bomber. Yes, I have the me first maximizer. Like, but what do I do with them? Like, how am I going to handle that so that I can break free from this heaviness that they're feeling and having to meet these people's demands?
Well, a little phrase that I came across, I wish I could remember exactly who said it. I've heard it a bunch of different ways. And I think the original person was Tony Gaskins Jr. that said it. It was this little phrase I just kept in my mind because I saw that it was so true. And it's this: you teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
That's a statement. I mean, it's the truth. By your repeated behavior, you are teaching people how they can treat you. For example, I'm sure everybody listening to this, if I said to them, I'm going to give you $100 if you can text someone in your contact list that will instantly text you back. Mm. Everyone can think of that one person that'll instantly text you back.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I said, I'll give you $100 if you can text someone in your contact list that you probably won't hear from until the end of the day, or maybe to tomorrow.
Or maybe 2 months later.
That would be my son-in-law, Jason. My son-in-law, Jason, is the most digitally disciplined person I know. You will not hear from him until it's his lunch hour between 12 and 1 on Eastern time. All of a sudden, my phone will ding with his little sound I've assigned to him. And I'm like, oh, Jason's on lunch hour. He's catching up on his text messages. Or you'll hear from him after 7 p.m. once dinner's done with the family. And he and my daughter have cleaned up the dishes and they're just settling in for an evening. About 7 o'clock, you'll hear from him. He has taught me how to treat him.
Yeah.
And so when we look at these pushers and these pouters and these guilt bombers and these me first maximizers, we have taught them how to treat us. So we need to start teaching a little different lesson. So I didn't announce to anybody and say, hey, God's really teaching me about people pleasing. I'm going to be behaving differently from now on. I didn't do that. I just slowly started to teach them that they needed to treat me differently. So that pusher that would constantly be texting saying, I need this, I need XYZ. And I would text back instantly and I would say yes and do it right away.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped texting them instantly. I would text them, later in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be like, why didn't you? I texted you at 1:30. And I'm like, I know. And I'm just now, again, I would announce, I wouldn't apologize. I wouldn't say, I'm so sorry, or I was just getting back to you. I would say, I'm just now reading my texts from the day.
Mm-hmm.
I would announce. And I would say, I see that you need XYZ. Yes, I can do that. Or no, I can't.
Right.
But that person that was sad, I would be honest with them and say no to something that they asked me to do. And if they were sad about it, I would say, I can see this has kind of upset you that I'm not doing this, but I have to be honest. I don't have the bandwidth to do this right now. And I know you want me to be honest with you. And if the tables were turned and you didn't have the time to do something I was asking you, I would want you to be honest with me. So I'm sorry that has upset you, but I feel like honesty is better than going around trying to make everybody happy all the time.
Right.
And I would just take them as they came, keeping that phrase in mind. I'm teaching these people how to treat me.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly over time, the pushers learned they couldn't push me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The Pouters learned they weren't going to get their way by dropping their smile. Those
Right.
me first maximizers were like, wow, she really stood up to me, and I would even call them out gently, but say, help me to understand something here. 2 weeks ago, you told me it was rude to click onto another call to tell someone I'll call them back. But now you're saying I should have done that. How can it be both ways?
Right.
And, put it back in their lap and make them explain it. But always keeping in mind that you're teaching people how to treat you. You're sending out, a resume,
Right.
not a resume. What do you get at the beginning of college? A syllabus. You're sending out a syllabus of here's what you can expect from me by your behavior. So start sending out the right information.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. So good. So if you had a chance to really, and right now you have a chance to talk to a lot of mompreneurs, and I know you talk to them on stage and through your books and through social, but what's one thing you would want all the mompreneurs to know if you had a chance to talk to them just for a few minutes? What would you want them to know first and foremost?
And this is going to come from having lost 10 people in the last 3.5 years in our extended family. All 4 of our parents, we moved 3.5 years ago to a town to be closer to the 4 grandparents. And now 3 weeks after we moved, the first one passed away and they're all gone now.
Wow.
And I've lost uncles, aunts, cousins in the last 10 of them in the last 3.5 years. And so my answer is coming from that. Mm-hmm. It's this, that nobody, none of them on their deathbed, no one on their deathbed thinks or says, gee, I wish I'd spent more time working. Gee, I wish I'd spent more time at the office. You're going to miss, those people. You're going to want those people around you. And I saw this happen first with my sister-in-law, and then with all the other ones that in their last days, they wanted to talk about memories of things they did with people. They wanted people there. They weren't asking, hey, let's go back over my financial records and see how much money I've made, right. Or let's go over my success. And so if relationships are going to matter most then, they need to matter most now.
Right.
And so we need to be filling our time, yes, with ambition, with projects and endeavors. That's great. It's wonderful. But remember that that's not the most important thing. Mm-hmm. We need, again, kind of circling back to what I said earlier, we need to make our relationships the main thing and tuck in all the work around the edges rather than the other way around.
Yeah. That's so good. And there has been so much loss, and, none of us are guaranteed another day. We're just not guaranteed that. And I think a lot of women, especially mompreneurs, like, well, one day, right? It's the one day phrase. One day I'll get back to dating my spouse. One day I will spend that time with my children. One day I will go call my mother, my father, and have that hard conversation. And we're just not guaranteed that that's ever going to happen, So don't wait, don't wait to get out of people pleasing prison until you reach that level of success or until your kids are out of the house. I mean, it's just that disease of pleasing, and the busy is a disease as well. And we're just not guaranteed. And so I always try to say, let's just make today your day one, and so maybe today you're listening and you're hearing Karen share, and today needs to be your day one that you break free from the people pleasing prison. And she's given you so many helpful stories of her own journey in this. And she has the book, When Making Others Happy is Making You Miserable. We'll put that in the show links. There's other books. I was looking at some of your other books. Was it Hoodwinked? Is that the other one?
That's a mom book. Yep.
That looks hilarious.
Yeah, it's 10 myths moms believe and why we all need to knock it off.
I love that. Knock it off. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy that one next. I'm going to buy that one next. So we'll leave a list to all of that. And you have a website where they can see all this stuff too, right? So we'll put that in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are you most excited about right now in the season that you find yourself in?
Probably two things. My grandson. I've always wanted to be a grandma, so I'm very excited about that. And then,
is he close to you?
No, they were 12 miles from us, but they moved to Tennessee. So now they're 10 hours from us, but that's okay. I like to travel, and because I travel for ministry and for speaking, I have frequent flyer miles. So we'll get down there. That would be one thing. And then also, two friends and I about a year and a half ago started an endeavor called mymentorshipcourses.com. And we have digital courses that we sell online. We did one on people pleasing. We did one on silencing the noise of life so you can hear from God. I just recently did one on grief, as I was talking about all the people I lost. And those have been really fun for us to see people interact, because they can interact in the course and ask us questions and give their feedback in real time as they're watching the videos and doing the devotions that go with it. And my mentorship courses is probably what I'm the most excited about right now.
That's so cool. I did notice those when I went on your website. This is a selfish question just for me, because I'm just super interested anytime I interview an author or someone who's in ministry writing Bible studies and things like that. If someone's listening and is interested in maybe starting that journey, what would you say the first couple of steps in pursuing writing a book or writing a Bible study? What would you say some steps would be to do that?
Don't overthink it. Just do it. Don't try to be profound. Nobody is. We're not profound. God is. God is amazing. We're not. So just simply just share your story. Just start small. Maybe it's just you write a Bible study for 5 friends and you guys get together over coffee every other week and you do the Bible study. Or, maybe it's just you want to be a speaker and you speak at your local church for their Christmas tea or whatever it is. And, there's only 15 people there or 20 people there. Just start small and share your story, share your life, be who you are. Don't try to be the next whoever, famous person, famous Christian. Be the first you, because that's what the world needs, is for you to just be you and share your story.
Love that. Love that. All right. Last question I want to ask you. I love to ask just, what's your favorite book that you're reading right now? What's your favorite quote or scripture, and a favorite way that you like to fill up your own cup, or what you do for self-care? So what's your favorite book you're reading right now or have read?
Right now I'm reading a book. I just love it. It's called Beautiful People Don't Just Happen by Scott Sauls. And it's how God takes all the brokenness of things we've done or things that were done to us and makes you a beautiful person.
Wow.
And that's been a great book. So that would be the book. What was your next one?
Favorite quote or scripture that you love, that it's one you always go back to?
In this season of life, it's been Psalm 62:5. It says this: rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from him. And in the Hebrew, the word for alone means, in stark contrast to any other idea, the only solution that works and the real one rather than the counterfeit. And I think the scripture has been so important to me, because so often I go to other things to find rest. Not that it's wrong to have a spa day. I'm all for a spa day, but to realize that it's in God alone that we must rest, because he's the real one rather than the counterfeit. And he's the only solution that works. Yeah. So that was Psalm 62:5.
Love that. I love that Hebrew translation. Mm-hmm. That's really, really powerful. And then what do you do for self-care? Is there something that you love to do, like cooking? I think I saw you do a lot of cooking, baking. Is that what you do that is just for you, just something that Karen really enjoys doing?
That, and I love to go, even if I don't buy a single thing, I love to go antique shopping. I love to go to a huge antique mall and look around, not even necessarily that I need anything, because I don't need anything else, but it's just it's calming for me. It's nostalgic. I'll go, oh, that's the same cake holder that my grandma had, or that's the same, lamp. I remember my Aunt Patty had that 1970s lamp or whatever. It's just kind of a walk down memory lane for me. So I'll just get my favorite, whatever it is, time of the year it is, hot beverage, and I'll just go antique shopping all by myself.
I love it.
Sometimes I can drag my husband along. He enjoys it too, but not as much as I do.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again so much, Karen, for being on the show. This was amazing. Again, we'll put all of your links to your show, the books and your website so people can see all the books and the courses that you have to offer. This is the time of year where people are looking for, maybe something new to invest in themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think you would be a great resource, especially if people pleasing is something you're like, I'm no longer going to do this anymore. You definitely want to follow Karen. You definitely want to purchase her book and maybe part of that mentorship course that she has. So thank you so much for the time today for being on the show. It was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, friends. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode. And I'm always believing in you. Well, that's a wrap, friends, for this week's episode of the Mompreneur Life Remixed podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for following the show. It means so much to me. And listen, friend, sharing is caring. So if you loved this episode and thought of some fellow mompreneurs who could benefit, send them the link, share this episode, or take a screenshot and head on over to Instagram and share and tag me at Martine31Williams. We are connected on Instagram, right? It's where you will get all the fun behind the scenes of my life and business as a mompreneur. Until next time, know that I am believing in you always.